watching me from the depths below. A haunted grave where shadows grow. DEADPIT is watching me with eyes.
Howdy, folks. Welcome back. We are still watching, believe it or not. DEADPIT is watching episode 4. Uncle Bill, are you excited to talk about some movies? We got a lot of them today.
We're always going to be watching you.
We'll always be around. We're like the Highwaymen, but for horror.
Yep. So this is interesting, though, because we've got a lot of films that you may have never heard of, and then we've got some in here that are pretty well known. So it's a good kind of mixture, I feel like.
Lots of different studios this week as well. 9 different movies. And yeah, man, we might as well dive into it because there's a lot to talk about. Some good, some bad, some possibly ugly.
Yeah.
Documentary goodness, porno, which we might as well get to the porno. Because how the fuck do you review a porno movie? I mean, this is a artsy, fartsy, French, like neo-erotic noir. I knew I was in for it when I read that.
Well, you gotta really pay attention to if the squirting scenes were well lit, because that's important.
Look, buddy, my favorite beverage is squirt. I don't want to hear you talk negatively about that.
Yeah.
But, okay, so the movie that we're talking about is a French film that Severin Films recently released. Let's solo it here. From 1975, right? Look at the artsy, like spot gloss, erotic craziness here. It's Don't Change Hands, directed by Paul Vichali in France, with a plate of snails in 1975, and I had no idea what in the hell this movie was. Severin sent this to us a little while back, and I think it was in there. Maybe it debuted in the summer sale. I can't keep track because they come out with so much stuff. Severin Films does, and man, I want to be honest with you. When I read the synopsis of this, and when I read the synopsis, I didn't realize that it was totally an X-rated movie. But it just didn't sound like my thing, and it wasn't. But, Uncle Bill,
I want to just ask you a question, though. Were the ass-eating scenes well blocked?
They were very hairy. They were very hairy asses.
You gotta have the cinematography on the ass things to be, you know.
Very.
They bring in Dean Gundy to light this some bitch.
Well, look how artistic that cover is of the spot gloss, right? You can see that spot gloss there, right? So the French, man, like they're highbrow porn, but it's still porn.
They're like, ooh la la.
Yeah, it makes. Can you believe, though, that it took this long for this movie to make its debut on Blu-ray here in the U.S.?
100% can believe that, yeah.
I don't think this one is done very well for Severin, but I do have to commend them that, they bring out stuff. This is the film preservation thing. They restored it. It did look amazing. The sweat on the balls, you could see it clear as day.
Glistening.
Each little pubic hair. All over the women's, just all over their undercarriage, pretty much. Back then, this was 1975, so it was almost like they were wearing like hairy panties back then.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a little bit of a story to Don't Change Hands, believe it or not. A local prominent politician, Uncle Bill, received a porno starring her own son, and they're using it for blackmail. They want to say, hey, I'm gonna let this porno out of your son having a threesome with these 2 hairy women unless you give me a lot of money. And the politician's like, no, I don't want to do that. So she hires a private investigator, Melinda, played by Marion Malisensi.
Hello, you want the baguette?
and they're going to try to track down who's trying to blackmail the politician in France. And you know, it's a French sex movie. It's rated X. There's lots of sexual activity going on throughout the movie.
Lots of it.
It's very French. It is French, and it was made by a filmmaker too, Paul Viciali,
Bacalio.
who had a career that spanned from the early 1960s all the way till his passing in 2023. He was 91 years old, had a long, long life and a long career. And I'm willing to bet that he made some movies that were way better than this.
No, he didn't. This is his best movie.
I hope he made a movie better than this. I
He
really
was like,
did.
This is my Citizen Kane. Don't change hands, right?
But my thing is, Uncle Bill, how do you review a porn? Like, I know Rambo, our good buddy Rambo Raff, he gets some of these spoof porns into review, but I mean, I can't. When it comes to especially older shit, like how do you review it? Like, if the male had this thrusting movements on the female and went back and forth between one female to the other, and it was just insane. And then the
That's how you
climax,
review it.
yeah, in the climax scene, he just erupted and had a amazing load all over the woman.
I give that low 3 out of 4 stars.
So, man, like I think Vinegar Syndrome did it right with these sort of movies, changing the label entirely. And I think Severin should probably do that as well. Have a Severin X-rated label or something like that, so people know, more detail what in the hell they're getting in, right? So this company's has a Severin Kids label. You could definitely do a Severin X-rated label, but that is Don't Change Hands from 1975. Severin always does an amazing job with these releases. Very nice, paperwork. Very nice slip cover here and packaging and all that. And there is some extra materials in this as well. Le Cinephile, an appreciation by Knife and Heart director Jan Gonzalez.
Janos.
Elsewhere man author Matthew Orlean on the life and impact of Paul Viciali.
Bicalio.
Noir d'Amour screenwriter Noel Simsolo on Change Pas de Man, which is that's what it's called in France. The Prodigal Son and the Prodigal Son, a conversation with actor Jean-Christophe Bouvet. Jean-Christophe Bouvet.
This is one of my favorite things to ever watch you review.
A Remedy for Chaos, a conversation with actress Miriam Mesavezi.
Yeah.
Re-release trailer that Severin, of course, had to put together because, God damn it, there was no trailer for this. This shit come out in like maybe 10 porno theaters in France or whatever in the fucking mid-70s. But, dude, like, you want some obscure 70s porn? Don't Change Hands is for you, and it is out now from Severin Films.
Talk about this one. Let me ask you a question, CK.
What you got?
Does the name Elia Kazan ring any bells?
No, none at all. What you got there?
This is a film by him called The Visitors. For people that don't recognize that director's name, because I didn't. I should have, though, because he directed A Streetcar Named Desire, On the Waterfront, East of Eden.
Oh, wow.
Baby Doll.
So he was like an old school filmmaker.
He was most famous in the 50s. I mean, he had a string of hits that were like legendary.
Yeah.
This is him at the end of his career. Like, this is the second to last film that he ever directed. And this is such a weird film to go out on. I mean, well, almost go out on. Because this is not necessarily a home invasion movie, but it's very similar, like, to something like that. it's a little bit more stylized than that. So let me set this up for you. James Woods is a Vietnam vet, and he's living at home with his wife and their newborn daughter. Okay. And you come to find out that, like, one day he gets these visitors that come to his house. And they're two ex-army buddies. And you can immediately sense that when they show up, there's something wrong. Like there's some sort of tension or something like that. And you don't really know why immediately. And for about the next 30 to 45 minutes, all it is them just kind of like eating dinner with them, and like they're checking out this big farm and stuff like that. But you can tell, like, the one guy who is great, played by Steve Railsback. Steve Railsback is one of the best character actors.
Fantastic, yeah.
Yeah. He keeps like eyeballing him, and there's this really weird underlying tension about what's going on and why, that this is so weird. So you come to find out finally, like, James Woods spills it that while they were in Vietnam, they'd all served together in the same platoon, and there was a court-martial hearing where one of the guys had raped and killed somebody. And he may have raped and killed. They definitely like raped him. I'm not sure if they killed him or not, but like left him for dead, let's say.
Right.
And he
They were killed by
testified.
death,
Yeah,
almost.
he testified against those guys, and the two of those guys on the other side of that court martial were these two guys. So for the rest of the film, it's basically like kind of like, something bad's gonna happen, but it just goes on and on and on until almost the very end before anything really like significant kind of happens. But it does. Like I'll say that for
Just
for sure.
at the very end. Yeah, I remember, Kino Lorber, who released this. I was reading the synopsis for it, and I was like, wow, this sounds actually really, really cool, because a lot of the times with Kino, they'll release these movies that no other studio has ever released. Like, they'll get stuff out there that we've never seen on Blu-ray before, or maybe even DVD before. And I'm not super familiar if the Visitors had, like, I'm sure it had maybe a DVD or something before or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was one where I was like, yeah, this definitely sounds like something that we would be into. And I know the in the chat there from Parts Unknown says it's a classic. What do you think, Uncle Bill?
It kind of is. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like an unsung cult kind of film. Like, I don't know if I'd necessarily call it like a masterpiece. I wouldn't go that far, because it drags a lot in the middle. Okay. And you really have to be willing to commit to this movie completely and to see through the middle. Because there's this whole kind of subplot with the wife's dad who owns the farm, and he kind of gets in with them, and they start to like get together and drink and shit. It's just really weird. Like, and they start to hang out. So there's this whole thing going on in the middle of the film. And then by the end of the film, it really like picks up in probably like the last 20, 30 minutes. But everybody's great in the movie, though. That's the thing. Like, every actor in this movie is great. So you got James Woods, you got Railsback, you got Chico Martinez. Everybody knows Chico Martinez. And I don't know who the wife is, though, but like, she's really good in it too. And there's this weird kind of like sexual tension between her and the Steve Railsback character too, that kind of goes all the way through the movie. And you get the sense that, like, from the beginning of the film, that she's not happy in the relationship with James Woods. It's just, it's a very creepy, unnerving, intense film from really like a master kind of filmmaker that was at the end of his career. Like I said, some people who don't like slow drama, kind of slow burn dramas, are probably not gonna like this, but I recommend it, man. I think that, like, if you're into like that kind of film, like a revenge style kind of, movie like that, it's really, really good. There's no real special features other than audio commentary by film historians Kat Ellinger and Martin Contario. And that's it. This is a Blu-ray disc. Excellent transfer though for a film that's like this old and kind of forgotten.
Yeah,
So,
a La Kazam, baby.
mhm.
And East of Eden, man. That's one, in my opinion, that's one of the best movies ever. Like, my dad introduced me to that years and years and years ago. And I didn't think that I would be a big fan of, like, James Dean stuff, but I didn't really know anything about him or whatever.
Yeah,
But that's a fucking killer movie. So just the fact that he's directing it should warrant you enough to check it out if you haven't seen it.
yeah. I mean, like I said, it's so weird that this movie. I didn't even know this movie existed. Like you've. That's the cool thing about Kino is you find stuff like this all the time that like just had no idea that it wasn't on my radar whatsoever.
Mm, very
But
cool.
that's the visitors from Kino Lorber.
Something, a horse of a totally different color, Uncle Bill. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't have ever watched this had it not been for Sarah. She was the one that wanted to check it out. I remember it being kind of fun, but I had a fucking ton of fun with this. I don't know if I just didn't remember it well or not. Any kids that grew up around this time, this is a great throwback. And oddly enough, Paramount Home Entertainment did a 4K UHD of Addams Family Values, Uncle Bill. And, I don't know if you've seen this movie any time in the last little bit or if you're familiar with the movie.
Oh
For,
yeah.
so, for some reason, the sequel is the only one that I can really even recall. Like, I definitely need to go back and watch the first movie again, but I think the sequel is probably the better of the two movies.
See, the interesting thing about that movie is that I've seen it a lot because of my kids, and mostly because of the musical at the end of it. Like for some reason, they just really love that whole sequence with the where they're at the camp and they put on the musical of the Indians and shit.
Right.
Yeah, so I've seen it like more times than I should. Really.
It's been a long time since I'd seen it, but it's a hell of a lot of fun. Barry Sonnenfeld, I probably mispronounced it. So he kind of cut his teeth on these movies. Like he directed the first and the second movie. He would go on to do the Men in Black movies and Get Shorty, some huge financial successes in Hollywood, and just doing big mainstream movies. But yeah, this was kind of his start, and I this is just a fucking hell of a lot of fun. So Morticia and Gomez Adams, everybody is back from the first movie, pretty much. I think they have a newborn baby, and its fucking name is Pubert, and I just fucking
It's killer.
Pubert,
Oh, why
right?
not?
And it's a little Gomez. He has a little pencil mustache or whatever else. And Wednesday and Pugsley, and this is 93, I think. Wednesday and Pugsley hate the baby, and they try to actually even kill it. Right? Do you think they could do that in a movie now? Behead a baby,
No,
yeah, throw it off the roof, or even
I
act like
think
they're doing it?
I always thought that was the weirdest part about the Addams family is that the kids are always trying to kill one another. Like it's so fucked up in a way. Like
Yeah,
just throughout the entire,
but
they're trying to kill the baby. So yeah,
yeah. So I think the story is the Adams are looking for a nanny to take care of little Pubert, and cue in Joan Cusack, who I think the character's name is it Kathy or Debbie?
it's
Debbie,
Deb. Yeah,
and she is a serial killer. She is known as the Black Widow, right? She's a famous serial killer, but she's not really interested in anything but taking out Uncle Fester, who she thinks is a multimillionaire. Like I don't know where that came from at all, but she's wanting his money or whatever. And the star of this whole movie, and I'm going to give him credit, is Christopher Lloyd as fucking Uncle Fester. Like his mannerisms and just like I think that they should have done. He was so great at that role. They should have done like a fucking Fester movie. Like he should have been the lead because the interaction with him and Joan Cusack throughout the entire movie, because Joan Cusack's trying to kill him. You know, of course, he's an Addams, so he thinks that that's just the
That's normal, yeah.
that's normal, like their way of showing love to one another or whatever. And then they send the kids to summer camp. There's that whole. This is a very '90s movie as well, early '90s. I think the kids kind of catch on that Debbie is up to no good, and she has them sent to summer camp. And it's just a fucking hell of a lot of fun, man. I was actually shocked at how much I enjoyed this movie.
I think you're right too. I think that there's two things that hold that movie together for me that make me able to watch it still. It's like Christina Ricci and Christopher Lloyd, because Christopher Lloyd completely disappears into that. You don't even notice that's him.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's how good that he is in that too. But Christina Ricci really kicks it up to a whole new level.
Oh yeah,
during the camp sequences of that, like she's insanely good in that movie, man, in both those movies, really. But like to have her go up against, I forget what that guy's name was, but like the camp counselor guy who's been in, he was in like Ghostbusters 2.
Yeah, Ghostbusters, and then like the female counselor was in a bunch of shit too, but I don't know.
Yeah, but it's kind of like good versus evil, and like the way that all played out, and at the very end where they put on the big play, and there's a big brawl between all the Indians and the Pilgrims, which is kind of funny because Thanksgiving's coming up. But like, yeah, I mean that whole thing was amazing.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun, and this 4K looks really great as well. And I'd seen this movie before because I remembered the whole summer camp dynamic and all that. And Joan Cusack actually does look fucking really hot.
Yeah, it's weird because I never thought she was like particularly attractive, except
either.
this movie. Like,
yeah, she was like smoking hot in this movie. I can't blame Uncle Fester for wanting to kind of disown his family there briefly, trying to get some of Debbie. I don't know if it ever happened for him though. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. Who's to say? But this one is out now from Paramount Home Entertainment. There is a audio commentary on it with the director and a vintage behind the scenes making of. So not really a lot of extras on this either, but it looks really, really good. And there's already the 4K of the original out, so it kind of goes hand in hand with that. And it's kind of weird. Like, I know Raul Julia passed away shortly after this movie was made or released or whatever. But they could have, I think they could have continued on still somehow.
They tried to. Remember when they had the Tim Curry one that fucking bombed?
Like, I don't remember that, no.
Yeah, man. There's another Addams Family movie with Tim Curry as like Gomez.
But none of the other cast returned, though, right?
I don't think so. I don't know, though. I'd have to go back and look. I doubt it.
Carol Kane is in this, too. Is like
Carol
Granny.
Kane. Yeah.
She's great. She's great in this. A lot of great characters in this. And yeah,
Did you ever notice too, like anything Carol Kane shows up in for like a bit part, she's a fucking killer in it. Like when she shows up as the fairy and Scrooged, she's amazing in that. And then this movie and like pretty much anything she does, like when a stranger calls, like if she has a bit part in any movie, it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, and this is no exception. Yeah, this one is out now. It's a 4K. And looked really good and everything. Not a lot of extra features, but it's a lot of fun. Perfect one to watch. I did watch this around Halloween, but I'm just now getting to review it. So it's a great one. It's out now.
I'm gonna bring up one now that you would never in a million years believe was worth a shit, but it is. Because it looks like it wouldn't be worth two fucks.
What's that?
The Mad Bomber. With our boy. Let me tell you something I figured out. You cannot go wrong with Chuck Connors.
Chuck Connors is a badass.
Yeah. I think that Tourist Trap should have like keyed me off to that fact, but like You got Vince Edwards, Chuck Connors, and Neville Brand in The Mad Bomber, and this is another joint from Severin. And I was like, what in the fuck kind of like movie is this? Because you don't really get a good idea from
No,
like,
that's not a
you know.
great cover, I don't think.
But here's the fun news, like about this movie. It's a Burt Gordon joint.
Ooh.
So that right there should kind of key me off to the fact that there might be something to this movie. Um, but I didn't get keyed off, and to be honest, I really wasn't looking forward to watching this movie, but I really enjoyed it, and I'm gonna really like run through and give you an idea why. For people that don't know who Burt Gordon is, by the way, he directed a lot of those schlock movies that we've just reviewed that were great. Food of the Gods, Empire of the Ants. He did like several more movies like
And we were
that.
talking about, I think that this was one of those movies that Code Red may have done a DVD for or something
You
like
may
that.
be right.
Didn't Garrett mention,
Yeah.
I think
Well,
that movie.
it went as under another name too, and I wonder if that had anything. It was called The Police Connection. So I don't know if that might be part of it too. But anyway, so this is the killer part of the movie. It's kind of it predates Falling Down by, I don't know, 20 years, something like that. And it's basically the same film, but like kind of in some ways better, in some ways worse, but in some ways it's better film than Falling Down. It's the same kind of plot line.
Mhm.
So what you've got is Chuck Connors is this kind of madman character that goes around planting bombs, and you don't really like understand, what the hell, why is he doing this? And the police are trying to catch him. You don't really get a good idea of it. And then you come to find out that the reason he's doing that is because his daughter overdosed, and he's like going around and taking revenge on all these people that he sees as like scum of the earth kind of types. Like there's one that's like a peeping Tom kind of creep, and there's another one that's like, like a thug and things like that. He'll plant bombs like around where they're at and fucking blow them up to get revenge, you know, basically on what happened to his daughter. Chuck Connors is great in this movie. Like that's the part that really like that floored me. I don't know why, but I just wasn't expecting Chuck Connors to be really good in a role like this. But
Man,
I
Chuck
think
Connors is a fucking great actor, though. Really, like almost everything that he's in. Like he was in a shit ton of westerns back in the day. So, but like later on in his career, he was doing some different stuff. Like, what year was this? You say?
1973.
Oh, okay. So this is older than I
Yeah.
thought. Okay.
Yeah, it's like I said, Falling Down came out in the early 90s, and I think this predates it by about 20 years. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Cool.
So, well, the other side of it, you got Chuck Connors, but you got Neville Brand, who's also a great actor in his own right, um, who is like this crazy asshole that assaults and kills uh, all these women for these, like, that he has these twisted kind of sexual fantasies about.
Wasn't he the guy that was in Eaten Alive?
Yes, that's the same guy, Neville
Okay.
Brand. Yeah, the main guy. Yeah.
That
So
name
I'm
sounds familiar.
thinking that this is the unedited version too. It's got to be, because there's some shit in this movie that's wild.
Yeah, I know when this one came out from Severin a few months ago on their site, a lot of people were like very excited about this release.
It's got a horrible fucking name, and I hate it when like movies do this. I probably would have stayed with the Police Connection over the Mad Bomber. There's something about that just sounds like fucking Ted Kaczynski or something. You know what I mean? It just
Right.
doesn't. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you on that. The Mad Bomber doesn't really do much for me.
But it is a great kind of revenge psychological thriller. Neville Brand is fucking almost better than Chuck Connors, like playing this crazy asshole. Yeah, it's I won't say it's like Dirty Harry in that way, with that character being like the was it the Scorpio killer or whatever it's called in Dirty, but it's like he's
Right.
similarly evil in that way too. This is a great movie though. that I can't recommend high enough. Special features on this edition from Severin are audio commentary by House of Psychotic Women author Kira Janice and retired bomb squad detective Mike Digby. Killer. An isolated score, audio interviews with the director Burt Gordon. Patricia Gordon remembers her father. To be in the moment interview with actor Cynthia McAdams. On the Trail of the Mad Bomber locations featurette, and then there's like a TV cut of this as well as the regular cut.
Awesome.
Yeah, Severin, they really, I don't know, man, they blow me away sometimes. No pun intended.
They get some
With shit like this.
interesting titles for sure.
Well, it's really interesting because, like, again, something I've never heard of. I'll bet there's probably hundreds of 70s films like this too that are great, kind of grindhousey style films that nobody's ever fucking really heard of that'll come out. But like this is definitely one of them. So check out the Mad Bomber.
The Mad Bomber, the Mad Bomber. All right, so I've got one more Severin film to talk about, so I might as well go ahead and talk about it because this is one that we touched on a previous episode. And I think the whole gimmick with this one is Phantasmad had mentioned that this is the movie where there is dog on female relations. Right? I'll just say that, try to say that in the most appropriate way possible. This woman fucks a dog in it, basically, in layman's terms. But man, there's more to it.
Yeah.
There's way more to it than this. The director... This is fucking Spanish. This one is Eloy de Iglesia.
Right.
And this one stars Ana Belén and Juan Diego. This is The Creature, Uncle Bill. Oh. And man, The Creature, I want to hype it up for you guys because I really, really enjoyed this. And that's not to say that I enjoy bestiality in any way. That's more of Uncle Bill's thing.
Right.
But the story behind this and the way it's made and everything is what I really enjoyed the most out of it. It's just wild. Like nobody else in this time period, this was from 1977, would have the guts to do. I don't know how they talked this lady into doing these simulated, I mean, it wasn't really simulated love scenes with the dog or anything, but there were, the way they edited it together was kind of uncomfortable. You're like, oh, but we'll get into the story of this because this is story based, believe it or not. Now this is the same director that brought us Cannibal Man, which is kind of more of a well-known, I think it was Elio de Iglesia.
Yeah, it's Elian Gonzalez. That's what he's doing now.
That was more of his well-known movie in Cannibal Man, but Ana Belén and Juan Diego play a young couple by the names of Christina and Marcos, who are trying to have a baby. They're a young married couple. They've kind of got some issues. They're not getting along the best ever was, but they did receive great news that Marcos knocked Christina up finally. She was pregger. And they're both excited about having the baby and everything. And you just know something bad's going to happen, right? And it does. She has a miscarriage. They lose the baby. They're having marital issues. She's not happy. They decide to go on, have a little mini beach vacation in Guadalajara City. And this black stray mutt that's on the cover there follows them on that trip. They're like, and she's like, oh, the poor dog. She's got an instant fascination with this dog.
Yeah.
And the guy's like, okay, I mean, you're an animal lover, but he doesn't realize how much of an animal lover that she actually is until it's too late.
This sounds like a classic to me.
Dude, yeah. Christina, has a strange, and they have a strange fascination. Her and the dog is fascinated with her. She is fascinated with the dog.
Yeah.
She ends up naming the dog Bruno, which was originally going to be the name of their son. And the guy, Marcos, is freaking out. Marcos is like a famous newscast guy or something like that in, Mexico City or wherever they're at. And he's getting more and more concerned with what in the hell is going on. She's he finds the dog laying in the bed with her and all this. And, so I mean, it's one of those. Well, one of those. It's the only one of these type of movies.
I was going to say, how many of these are there? They got a whole line of them with like German Shepherds and shit.
More and more, weird, questionable things. Marcos decides he's like, man, this fucking dog is really fascinated with my wife. So he decides to he decides to get Bruno a mate. So he gets Bruno this white female mutt, and they get along really well. They actually show those two dogs fucking. That is in the movie.
That's great. And you need to see that.
Yeah, Christina gets jealous. I'm not kidding. She gets jealous. And I don't want to give the whole movie away, but
there's a threesome.
Let's just say, there's some semi-graphic, like just weird. I mean, you can tell there's some weird shit that's going on in this movie. And ultimately it involves Christina getting pregnant again, but who by?
Buddy, what in the fuck? What in the actual fuck are you watching?
The Creature from Alien Gonzalez. Or, Eloy de Iglesias.
We don't talk about Bruno.
Really man, don't. I gotta say, I gotta put this movie over. It's very entertaining. It does remind me a lot of Italian movies. It's filmed very much like a lot of those Italian movies. It's out there, of course, you can tell. When fucking Bruno meets Christina, they should have called it that. But I was
dog fucking, admit it.
I was shocked at how much I actually liked this movie. This was very entertaining. There's a lot of laugh out loud moments in this. Ultimately, it's very well made, though. Technically, it's a very well made movie. I wonder what kind of release this had back in the day. I just can't.
Can you imagine that in a theater?
Yeah. But there is some extra features in this too. This is a Blu-ray edition. Included is these are special features titled "A Strange Movie," an interview with assistant director Alejo Lauren.
I want to hear what these fuckers have to say about being on the set of this movie for sure.
There's an interview with our good buddy Gaspar Noé.
Oh, I'm sure he loves it.
The filmmaker Eloy de Iglesias, and an introduction by Gaspar Noé at the Cinémathèque Francis Baklava. So there are some special features in this too. Severn Films has this one out. If you can get this one, I know they have a sale going on. If you can get this one at a good price, it's actually really worth checking out. It's actually a lot of fun, Uncle. But I don't want that to sound bad, but it really is.
It definitely gives new meaning to the word doggy style. So,
indeed, dog lovers everywhere will enjoy this.
It's PETA approved.
Yeah. You've got marital issues if a dog is replacing you. Just say that.
That dog was, I don't know. What kind of dog was it, by the way?
It almost looked like a German Shepherd, right? But I've never seen a black German Shepherd, so I don't know.
Oh, well, black dogs.
It may have just been a mutt. Look, buddy. Look.
What? I just saying it's black dog. That's all I'm saying. 1982. a year for the ages.
Indeed.
This that I'm holding in my hand right now, 1982, the greatest geek year ever, through MVD, the Rewind Collection, is a documentary about the year 1982 and mostly centers on the film, but also like goes into, or I'm sorry, films of 82, but also goes into like pop culture kind of stuff from the year of 82. And I've got to say that I hate documentaries like this. 99% of the time, like talking head style documentaries, I freaking cannot stand them. They're always the same. They're always like very, uninformative, and they don't have anybody in there usually that you care like what they have to say. There's the 1% of the time when I find one like this though, where it's like, this is genuinely a great documentary. I recommended this to Mark. Mark watched it and he loved it too. I would recommend this to anybody that grew up in the 80s, especially because like it makes a really great case that 1982 was probably the greatest year for like movie geeks that there would ever be. And a big reason that this is like for that being the case is you're still in like you're going from the 70s into the 80s. So you like most filmmakers still have creative control that they'll end up losing in the later half of the 80s because of bombs and things like that. So you've got creative control, but you've also got that Spielbergian shit kind of coming in. And it's a mixture of those two things. So you've got like great independent style movies and great big blockbuster style movies that all hit in that same year. So this documentary goes over like it goes over like ones that I'm not even familiar with from 82. It goes over the big ones, like the popular ones, but it also goes over like the ones that are kind of like unknown. Mostly people like the Sword and the Sorcerer and things like that. So it spends a lot of time on E.T., Blade Runner, Star Trek 2, Poltergeist, Tron. It also talks about Sword and the Sorcerer. I mean, there's so
That's
many
crazy.
films.
Yeah,
48
that's crazy.
Hours. It talks about 48 Hours.
Creep Show. I saw Creep Show on the
Creep
cover
Show. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a lengthy documentary.
there. Wasn't E.T. in 82?
Yeah, that's what I said. It spends a lot of time on E.T. That's like one of the main. It's 165 minutes long.
Oh, wow.
So it's 2 hours and was it 2 hours and 45 minutes long? Yeah.
That's a lengthy one right there.
So I watched the whole thing straight through though, man. Like I was fascinated by it because it talks a lot about just like the culture of like movies at that time, why this was like the best year, like all the stuff that was happening in the movie industry while these movies were coming out. And then it'll cut to like a specific movie. And then they'll have people from the movie like talking about the film. So you might have like somebody from the cast, one of the producers, maybe the director. But a lot of times you're not gonna get like Spielberg or anything to do documentaries like this or anything. But it covers a lot of ground and like the films and stuff. Like it even has like a section about all the horror films, like a very brief section where it covers like, Slumber Party Massacre and a lot of the slasher films that came out that were huge at that time, as well as everything else.
Yeah, 1982, like really throughout in my opinion, the entire decade of the 80s, but especially the early 80s, man. Like there was so much stuff that was coming out from week to week. It was ridiculous. Like you could go through weeks. Like that would be an interesting show, although it'd probably take a long fucking time to go through like all of the week's releases of an entire year through the 80s and see, because there was so much. Like,
well, think about it. Like think about it in 82. All right. So I just mentioned these movies, E.T., Blade Runner, Star Trek 2, Poltergeist, Tron. Then you've got The Thing. They cover that too. The Thing comes out that year. You've got they cover a movie called Megaforce, which I'd never ever heard of, which is like a Barry Bostwick movie that came out that year. There's a whole section on that movie, which is like a G.I. Joe style action movie. Conan came out that year. They cover that. there's just a lot, man. Like that year, when you really break it down and see like all the like huge blockbuster movies and stuff that came out that year,
That's amazing.
The
And
Elephant
it's
Man.
MVD Rewind, though. This may be the first documentary that they've ever done on that label. That's the interesting thing, too. Because the Rewind series typically does like old school releases. Like, I've never known them really to
Yeah.
do anything new. I mean, even though it is on old movies, but it's a documentary. So that's kind of an interesting choice, too. And we don't get a whole lot of the Rewind stuff anymore for whatever reason. But this one, yeah, does sound like it's really cool, especially if you're into that time period.
So this is and I didn't really realize this too until I was like really got into the background of this. This is from Joe Blow Production. So this is like the Arrow in the Head um label, brand, whatever you want to call it. Like
Mm.
that actually did this documentary. It's it's phenomenal though, man. So when you get into the special features of it though, there's not many special features because they really put everything up on the actual documentary. Like it's so long. But you've got extended interviews and extended scenes and things like that on the special features, which I can't believe you'd want to watch those. I mean, considering how long it is to begin with. Then you've got audio commentary with director producer, writer producer, and several of the other producers. There's 40 minutes of deleted and extended scenes. And then there's a fan speak, fan favorite films featurette, and a panel from the San Diego Comic Con. So let me say, like, again, and I've told people this in other streams, this is one of the best documentaries like this that I've ever seen. Like if you take out like, you know, documentaries like Paradise Lost and American Movie, this is not the same kind of thing.
Mm.
But in terms of like talking head style, multiple different movie kind of documentaries, this is one of the best ones. No shit.
Hmm.
This is
Very cool.
one of the better ones that I've ever
Yeah, I know
seen.
it. It's been getting really great reviews too, so I'm gonna have to check that one out myself.
Yeah, you'll love it. Like it just takes you back there, if only for a day.
That's what we do on the
Yeah.
show. I've got a documentary as well, so we might as well get into that. Put everything together here. Now, this is one that we had taken a look at. I think we had reviewed on the podcast a couple of years ago when this was making the rounds, the digital copy reviews and stuff like that. And it was very cool to go back and rewatch it. This is like pretty much like a no budget documentary. I'm sure they had some sort of budget on it, but you could tell most of this stuff was filmed at horror conventions, which Andre Gower's the director of this, and it's a documentary on the Monster Squad and primarily, the fandom of the Monster Squad and what led to its resurgence. And this is Wolfman's Got Nards from 2018, technically. Now, I think it was a couple of years later when we finally watched this that it was out, but this is it's a brief documentary. I think it's like 88 minutes. This is for fans of the Monster Squad. And you and I are so close with this series, especially some of the people that are in it. Andre Gower's a great guy. I spoke with him briefly a few years ago at the Fright Night Film Fest. And yeah, I think this was his first foray into filmmaking and did a great job with it. Used, I don't know what the budget was for this, but he did have a ton of like well-known people in it, and he probably didn't pay much anything to get him in. I know Heather Langenkamp was in it. Chuck Russell is in it as well. I think they had Seth Green, who was a big fan of the movie. Zack Ryder, aka Matt Cardona, is in the documentary as well.
Whoa, whoa,
Michael
whoa.
Felcher. I'm sure they didn't have to pay Michael Felcher anything. He's a fucking whore. He's in every damn thing.
Yeah. And Andre Gower is genuinely like one of the nicest guys though that you'll ever meet.
Yeah. And this is an interesting story though. And we've talked about it before, talking about the Monster Squad. Like pre-DVD, Monster Squad was really only known by very hardcore fans of the movie. A lot of people didn't have a way of seeing it. right? And I think that there was what kickstarted all. They talk about that in the documentary is they did this screening, I think, at the New Beverly in 2006, and that really got the ball rolling for that DVD that
Yep.
came out the next year. And that was one of the cases too, and we've talked about this before, where the DVD release really it found a whole new audience, a new generation of fans, and even people that are from our generation that may have missed the movie, which Garrett is one of those. He was telling us, I think, that he had never seen the movie as a kid or anything.
That's
This was
crazy,
something,
man.
yeah,
That
this was
movie was
something,
on like nonstop.
and it was a big rental as well. Just great artwork on the cover and everything. So, I mean, this is really Wolfman's Got Nards is a huge like tribute really to the fans. There's fans of the movie in there. The director Fred Decker is in there, and it's almost like he seems bitter kind of in it. Where yeah, I mean, it was good to like his big. Think about this, man. His biggest success is when he was in his early 20s.
Yep.
And then his career was like over. I think he was rewriting scripts or doing whatever the hell he's doing now.
Well, listen, man, I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, I kind of agree. Like, Fred Decker always seems like he's just completely bummed out and bitter and things like that. Truth of the matter be known, like he had a chance to come back and re-enter Hollywood in 2018 with The Predator, and that movie just sucked ass. And it just kind of like that was it. Like,
Well, he helped rewrite the.
yeah, he helped write it, and it was Shane Black and him, and like that's the classic kind of 80s duo right there. He just
Black and Decker, man. Black and
Black
Decker,
and
they
Decker.
reunited.
He just for some reason either has the worst luck of anybody in terms of timing, or he's just not. I don't know. Like his stuff is just not.
Mhm.
I don't want to say it's not that great, but it's just it doesn't connect
Yeah,
with people.
in this one they're talking about though the marketing behind the Monster Squad sucked. Like the poster that everyone loves to this day wasn't the original poster that was used. They had like wanted posters with the monsters on them. This movie came out 2 weeks after Lost Boys came out in the theater. So people were all talking about how fucking awesome Lost Boys was. Nobody really knew what the Monster Squad was. Was it a kids movie? Is it a horror movie? You know, unfortunately, it didn't find its audience then. But it. This is one of the rare occasions where I it found its audience like literally 20 years later.
Yeah.
And there's so many people in this documentary that we're friends with and we know. Adam Hewlin and Matt Panache, who 35 millimeter guys. Adam actually is the one that got me the Madman print, right? And they found a Monster Squad print, and I think it's still maybe only one of 2 or 3 Monster Squad prints in the whole world. But this was the first Monster Squad print that anybody knew of, and it's the one that they played at Quentin Tarantino's theater or whatever it was they went to. I think it was Tarantino's theater.
The New Beverly, yeah.
Found it in fucking Australia and had to pay some ungodly amount of money to get it shipped.
I'd say so, man. That
Um,
shipping would be insane.
So lots of fun stories. And this, oddly enough, was in the 4K edition. If you have the 3-disc 4K edition, which may have been limited, I don't know if that's still available, but it was included in that. And then Kino, of course, decided to do an individual release here as well, which is really cool. I always have fun with anything Monster Squad related, and I'm glad that Andre Gower got such a good release for this out. There is a lot of extras on this too. There's extended interviews on there with Fred Decker, Seth Green, Shane Black is actually in the documentary too. If I didn't mention that, interviews with fans, deleted scenes from the movie, the documentary, and music videos, and all that good stuff. This one came out last month from Kino Lorber. It is technically, I think, a part of their Studio Classics line. Look how all their shit looks so classy and goes
Oh,
well together.
look at that.
Right? But yeah, a lot of fun. High recommendation for me. And you've seen this too, right? Back a couple
Yeah,
years
back
ago.
in the day, yeah, when
Yeah.
it first came out. I mean, I love anything like that, man. Any kind of documentary attached to a film like that, like if it's full length, I'll love generally.
Love it violently.
Love it all. So this last one that I've got to review, oddly enough, is the one that I was most excited about and the one that I like the least. So I'm just gonna be honest with you. And that is, I always love this cover. Like, this is one of the best like bait and switch covers ever, because there is this scene in the movie, but it only happens for like about 10 seconds, and it really doesn't, like, it gives you a false idea that this movie's going to be some sort of slasher that's like, full of gore, and it's not that at all.
And that was the original poster as well, that same photo. So they
Yeah.
tricked people for decades with that.
So they really have, like, 1971's Fright with Honor Blackman, Susan George, Ian Bannon. Honor Blackman's great. She's always great in these movies. So is Susan George. She was like incredibly hot at this time period.
Who was she
too.
married to? She married to somebody famous, wasn't she?
Yeah, wasn't she married to Christopher George or one of them dudes?
Maybe that's what it was. I was thinking it was a Beatle or something.
Oh, you may be right. George Harrison? Who was she married to? It wasn't. It's either Harrison or Ringo. It's one of them two.
I can look it up. Well,
Yeah.
if you want.
This movie reminds you a lot of, like, in the beginning, it started out, it's very British, by the way. Jesus, is it British? Like, it's so British that it probably, you'll probably be eating fish and chips by the time you get done with it. But it's a story of this woman, Susan George, that's babysitting for a couple. And she's watching their young son at this big kind of like estate out in the middle of nowhere, and kind of finds it, odd. There's all these locks and shit, and like it's pretty clear there's something going on. But she's not aware of kind of what it is.
Mm.
And pretty soon into the movie, she's got a boyfriend too. Pretty soon into the movie, you find out that, like, the kid's father that she's watching is nuts. And he's been committed to an insane asylum, and he ends up escaping from the mental hospital, and with the plan to murder his ex-wife, who he kind of blames for a lot of the stuff like that happened to him. His ex-wife being Honor Blackman. So he gets there, and he actually makes it to the house and everything. The kid's in there, the babysitter's in there. Like, his intention is to kill everybody in the house, but then she pulls the Amy Steele trick on him, Susan George. So Honor Blackman's not there or anything, but something about Susan George reminds him of Honor Blackman when she was younger. So Susan George starts playing into it. She's like, "Oh yeah, I love you so much," and she pulls the fucking Amy Steele, Voorhees trick on him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I love you too. Things are gonna be great."
I love you, honey.
Because he's crazy, and apparently you can just do that with crazy people. You can just trick them into thinking you're somebody else entirely, right?
Yeah.
That's a thing that happens, and so that goes on for like quite a bit of time, but then eventually, because the boyfriend and everything kind of shows up as well. Eventually, he figures out there's something going on, and he gets pissed off, and that's where you get the scene where he's holding a piece of glass up to her mouth and shit like that.
Take that, you bitch. So I did look up. She was never married to anybody super famous. Her husband from 1984 to 2010, when he passed away, Simon McCorkindale.
Of course, Simon McCorkindale.
Yes.
Yeah. Was he ever married to Christopher George? Because I thought he was, or maybe that's another George.
Who, Simon or
no, Susan George.
No, I don't think so. Doesn't mention it on here. She was. She is Australian, I think. No, she's from London.
Yeah, she's British as hell.
Damn good looking woman.
Yep.
Even like, there's a photo of her in 2008. Still looked pretty good even then.
So here's my problem with the movie though. It does a good job in the beginning of kind of like cranking up the tension and like especially like up until the point where he gets there. But once he actually gets there and you kind of realize what's going on in the movie, like it really just gets stupid. They did so much to build this whole thing up, and then this goofy like guy shows up and they pull the Mrs. Voorhees trick on him. And then
What year was this movie, Fright?
71.
So this predates the Mrs.
Yeah, I mean,
Voorhees
I
and
guess they pulled the Mrs. Voorhees trick,
Mrs. Voorhees pulled
Yeah,
the trick from Fright. Yeah.
that's right. But there's also like a really weird thing that keeps happening in the movie that I hate, where they flash back between what's going on inside the house and what the kid's mom, the Honor Blackman character, and stepfather are doing in town. So like
Right.
you'll go back and forth between those two things throughout it, and it's really confusing, and you really don't get a good sense of like anybody's character or anything. And the babysitter, the Susan George character, is really stupid. She does a lot of stupid things in it that puts her in like bad situations and that she doesn't really need to be in, and she's not very perceptive about what's going on through the whole fucking. Like the dude shows up with the boyfriend that's all bloodied and shit, and she's like, "Who are you?" And he's like, "I'm the neighbor," and she's like, "Oh, okay." It's like, what? What the fuck are you talking about? So there's a lot of bad kind of plot holes and stuff like that in it, and it's just
It's
drags.
4K, by the way. Did we mention that?
Yeah, it is. It is 4K. If you like this movie, though, and there's a lot of people that do because I've looked it up. There's a whole kind of cult classic contingency for this movie. This is a 4K release. It's got audio commentary with Howard S. Berger from K&B.
I think that's a different burger.
Oh,
There's a writer that's Howard S. Berger, and then there's just a regular Howard Berger,
that would make more sense.
I think.
Yeah. So it's Howard Asperger.
Howard S. Berger, there you go.
Yeah. Okay. And then there's an interview with a film historian, Kim Newman, and that's the only special features of
They
it.
use Kim Newman quite a bit. We're
Let me
film
tell you.
historians as well,
Let
kind
me
of.
tell you something. Let me tell you something about this movie, though. For people who are fans of this movie, this transfer is fucking insane. And that's because it comes from a 4K scan of the original 35 millimeter negative. So, like, it will never look any better than this. I guarantee it.
And quick trivia note, right? Because we were just talking about Survivor Series 1997, right?
Yeah.
Honor Blackman is Steve Blackman's mom.
There ain't no fucking way. That'd be killer if that was true.
Look it up. Well, Steve Blackman, Lethal Weapon.
The Lethal Weapon, Honor Blackman.
So the last one though that I've got is another from Keno. Man, we've been fucking like all up in Keno business this week on the Dead Pit is Watching show. And this one is another one from director Sidney Haynes, who did a movie we talked about a few weeks ago, Burn Witches Burn, or Burn Witch Burn. This was his very first feature-length movie from 1960. We're talking about the Circus of Horrors tonight on the show. This is a very British horror movie, and it's one that I'm positive that we've never, ever talked about. So
It's British.
It's very British. Donald Pleasance is in this.
Oh, shit.
With a wig.
How have they ever seen that? That's got to be amazing.
He's got a full head of hair in this, Donald Pleasance.
Kind of, yeah.
Well, yeah. And what's funny is I was looking this up, I was like, oh, he's got to be crazy young in this. This was 1960. He was like 44, 45 years old in this. I'm like, damn, boys. Donald Pleasance's an old son of a bitch. But he's only in this movie very briefly. The actor Anton Diffring plays fugitive Dr. Rossiter, who's a plastic surgeon who got in trouble for botching a surgery and he's on the run, and he decides to move like anybody else. I mean, you're going to fucking move to France. That's where I'm going. When I need to hide out, I'm going to go to France. And meets up with Donald Pleasant's character, who his name was Vinay. He's French. And he runs this circus tent, like one of the more popular ones in France. And there's an accident, and Vinay, is killed by death. And Dr. Rossiter, although he goes by the name of
Jimmy.
Bernard,
Oh, okay.
Dr. Bernard's his assumed name. And he takes control of the circus after Vinay passes away. Vinay's daughter's still working for the circus. They do a lot of high-risk acts. There's gorillas, but not really gorillas. There's dudes in gorilla suits in this.
Makes sense.
But the plastic surgeon, the evil doctor, has a knack for finding deformed females and transforming them into beautiful women.
Ooh.
For the sole purpose of them becoming acts in the Circus of Horrors. And the horror really begins when some of the females want to leave the circus.
You ain't getting out.
Dr. Bernard's not very happy about, when that happens. So the bodies start to pile up. The fucking stupid ass French authorities keep saying it's fucking like accidental deaths. There's 12 fucking women that died, all from similar circumstances. Right?
Yeah, I just
There's a detective on the case that's thinks that the Rossiter and Bernard are one and the same, and yeah, it's just a kind
There's
of
all these women
show.
around here falling on machates, bulls and shit.
There's
crazy.
women that are falling off of trapezes and ropes, and there's one that I don't know if this was ever in a circus. I don't know who would have the balls to do this. I don't think I could trust even like I don't know, man. I just wouldn't do it. Like where a woman's spinning on a wheel, right? And she's like, and this dude's throwing knives and shit at her. That was one of the accidents. I think they unplugged the wheel or something. It's spinning around.
Killer. Yeah, man, that's a real gimmick. I don't understand that shit. I'd be scared to death.
I wouldn't do that shit. Yeah. But I mean, this is kind of fun. One of the real interesting aspects of it, this was filmed in 1960, and they filmed it in a real circus tent that was touring at the time.
Huh.
So if you wanted to see what that was like, I mean, most of the movie is shot, from the view of like a spectator at the circus. So that is kind of cool. And the video quality in this is also a 4K from Kino Lorber Studio Classics. There's the alternate cover there. And this has been released a multitude of times. This one is kind of fun. I wasn't a gigantic fan of this, but it's a little something different. Very British. There's some great acting in it. The thing about British horror is it's super serious, and this is too. And there's some goofy looking shit. There's some goofy looking shit.
It is super serious, isn't it? Like very dramatic.
It is very dramatic, yeah. And there's some goofy shit in it, but they're playing it straight the entire time, especially the fucking gorilla suit and shit that looks so bad. But this is a great release, though. The quality on this video quality is really, really good. It's one of those almost looks like Technicolor effect or whatever, and really, really good looking 4K. And there is an audio commentary with another film historian, David Delville.
Buddy, where the hell are they getting all these film historians, and why ain't we a part of them?
We're ahead of film historian. We're horrorologists from the Kentucky State Board of Horror.
Yep.
But Yeah, that is Circus of Horrors in 4K. Kino also has a big sale going on right now. I'm pretty sure this was part of it. A lot of their 4Ks are like $17.99, so by far cheaper than any other boutique label.
Oh yeah, I've got a whole list of like things here that I'm gonna get. Yeah.
Yeah, and the cool thing is all their stuff pretty much now, especially the Studio Classics and the Kino Cult and all that, comes in the slip covers, very nice editions. The transfers on these look great too. So Kino does a fantastic job. Kino Lorber. I guess it's KinoLorber.com.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you got Severin, was it SeverinFilms.com?
You got Severin, you got Paramount Pictures,
Yeah. MVD, motherfucker.
MVD Rewinds, all those. Man, lots of stuff coming out. We'll have even more stuff next go around. What did we do? 9 movies tonight? Holy shit.
Damn.
Holy shit. But stay tuned, guys. A New Beginning is the next episode. It's part 5. And we will catch you guys next time.
DeadPit.com.
I'd like to tell people, thumbs up the video, Uncle Bill.
Would you?
Yes. Thumbs it up with violence and fury and just love everything about it.
You hit the heart button, then you hit the ass button, then you can hit the go fuck yourself button. Follow that up with the I don't give a shit button.
There's all kinds of wonderful shirts over at shop.deadpit.com. Simply the best horror shirts. On TeePublic, there are others, but they all suck. You can get some Dead Pit Radio shirts. You can get Last South on the left. The Hills Have Eyes. Texas Chainsaw. Oh, wait, you can't say Texas Chainsaw. All kinds of shirts, folks. You're gonna love them. Shop.deadpit.com.
Special thanks goes out to our supporters on Patreon. Do you know what kind of stuff you can get on Patreon, Uncle Bill, starting at only $1 a month?
What's that?
Access to every Dead Pit show since 2005. We got almost 200 fan commentaries that we've done over the decades.
We have a literal jukebox full of songs and thousands of reviews. I don't even know how many shows are up on there now that we've done over the years.
Hundreds of thousands.
You need to figure this out now and subscribe to us on Patreon and YouTube and Instagram and help us to 1 million. The road to 1 million subscribers starts today.
So deadpitonpatreon.com. Join today. Tiers start at only $1, but I'd recommend at least the $10 tier.
You can do 50. The stock market's crashing around us, folks, but send us money.